Hello and good evening. My name is Alicia Davis, and I will briefly be discussing two types of hard drives. That is the hard disk drive, also known as the HDD, and the solid state drive, known as the SSD, as it relates to computers. So, a hard disk drive is basically made up of moving parts. So, hard drives are actually the major component of the computer which stores data. So, any information that your computer needs to function and all the programs you have on it is stored on the hard drive, and it also includes the operating system. So, if you're using Windows or Linux, it stores all the information that all those programs need to function. And again, hard disk drives or HDD drives are basically a type of hard drive, and it's made up of moving parts. So imagine a circular disk, which is the major component of the HDD, and there are a bunch of circular disks stacked on top of each other, and the disks are actually called platters. So they're similar to a CD or a vinyl, depending on how old you are with music, as far as music is concerned. So the platters are stacked on top of one another, and they're usually made up of aluminum alloy, glass, or ceramic. And there's a thin coating of magnetic material on each platter. So the magnetic fields on the platters is actually where the computer's data is stored excuse me, in tiny magnetized regions that represents bits of data. So if you can imagine, on the stack of platters, each platter has what are called sectors. So if you take a thin slice of the platter all the way around, that is considered a sector. And if you slice it almost like a pie, those are considered tracks. So each sector and track of each platter from the hard disk drive store bits of data, which is used to make sure the computer runs how all the information the computer needs. And if it has a solid state drive disk or an SSD, this is actually different in a way that there are no moving parts that function, so there's no platters or disks involved. It uses a grid of electrical cells or semiconductor chips, which send and receive the data that needs to be saved. So instead of having the platters, it uses electrical parts, basically, instead of moving parts. And each grid is separated into sections, which are called pages. And that's where the data is stored if you have an SSD hard drive on your computer. As it relates to hard drives, in general, there are two areas of the drive which investigators may use to analyze for digital evidence. There's allocated space on any hard drive, and there's unallocated space. So the allocated space is actually going to be all active systems that are generated by the user. So, when you pull up your computer, the email, the documents, the images, either other file types in which the computer is utilizing to store those programs is the allocated space. Anything that is considered to be stored in unallocated space on a hard drive, that's where your deleted files are, artifacts. So any artifacts that is created by the user when they're using the computer is stored in unallocated space. And this is going to be the most important area for a forensic investigation, because anything that someone possibly may try to hide, they may try to prevent anyone from knowing or getting rid of evidence. It may be an unallocated space on the computer, which is going to consist of possibly, electronic documents that were deleted, internet history that's no longer stored on the computer's allocated space. You may have, chats, information, multimedia files that may have attempted to get rid of. And unallocated space is crucial to be searched sooner than later if there is a forensic investigation of a computer, because it can be overwritten. So as time passes, the computer needs the unallocated space for new files and other data. So they're going to use the unallocated space, which means that anything that is there is going to be potentially lost forever if it is removed. So those are some basic pieces of information as it relates to hard drives.